Hello, I am Freema Gottlieb. Welcome to the weekly Torah reading. This week we have two parshiot, Hukat and Balak. I would like to focus on the story of Balaam, which is contained in Parshat Balak. The Torah tells us that never has there risen in Israel a prophet like Moses. To this, the Sifrei adds, not in Israel, among the Jewish people, but among the nations, Balaam. The Moabite king Balak only introduces his scheme that his holy hitman cursed the Jewish people because he was confident in his protege's prowess. Whoever you bless shall be blessed, and whoever you curse shall be cursed. Balaam does not immediately accede to his patron's request. Piously he bids the messengers to stay overnight while he sounds out the divine will. The God who addresses Balaam bears a remarkable resemblance to the Almighty. Like the king and many rabbinical commentators, we can't help but be impressed by Balaam's access to God. But Balaam receives a flat rejection. He is not to curse Israel, either from his home turf or from Moab. Israel is intrinsically blessed. As God's honest broker, Balaam tells the messengers to go home, but he relays God's reply not as outright refusal, but as a pretext for them to persist. In reality, his desires and those of the king converge, and he makes sure they know that. As in flirtation, Balaam postpones consent, using God as a cover to raise the stakes and inflate his own power. A more prestigious deputation arrives, offering higher honors. Again, they are turned down. Nevertheless, the messengers are bid stay overnight. What does Balaam hope to gain? Does he think he can manipulate God? In fact, he does gain some traction. This time, God lets Balaam accompany the messengers to the king. Then comes the tale within a tale. Balaam's bluster of having attained a supreme level of spirituality is comically undercut by the admonishments of a donkey. What God's prophet is blind to, she sees and articulates. Didn't God allow Balaam to accompany the messengers? Why does he send his angel to slay him? It's not fair. The angel must be satisfied with the death of an innocent brute out of consideration for a genocidal human. Again, God allows Balaam to proceed, this time via his messenger. The man views Israel from various heights and perspectives in hopes that their emergence from the shadows might put them in a more negative light. But whenever Balaam opens his mouth to curse, God's most sublime blessings pour forth. From what perspective is the Balaam story told? Baba Batra 14b tells us, Moses was the author of his own book, that's the Torah, the book of Job, and the Balaam story. All writing is biographical. From it we can learn an author's major preoccupations. Years before, after the Israelites worshipped the golden calf and were saved from destruction only through Moses' intervention, God invited him in a time of favor to ask for something for himself. Show me your ways, Moshe begs. The Talmud, Brachot 7a, explains this request as the problematics of divine justice. Why do the righteous suffer? the core question of the book of Job. But what impelled Moses to write of Balaam, the Hitler and Goebbels of his generation? Realizing his own power to temper God's anger, he may have been modest enough to wonder if God might be similarly affected by any spiritual virtuoso with no moral foundation. That was the philosophical question he was probing in exploring the inner life of his amoral counterpart. It says in Pirkei Avot, the Ethics of the Fathers, anyone whose goodness outweighs their wisdom shall endure. Anyone whose intellectual pretensions outweigh their good deeds, their pretensions will not endure. The latter fits Balaam perfectly. Moses returns to the Balaam anecdote in his final admonition to Israel. But the Lord your God refused to heed Balaam. Instead, the Lord our God turned the curse into a blessing for you, for the Lord your God loves you. The Balaam story filtered through such an intercessor as Moses in his farewell speech reminds us that the curses in the Torah derive from an authentic source in a loving God who can turn all curses round, and that a little of that power has also been handed on to us, the Jewish people, to be a power for good. Shabbat Shalom.